It's great to be here. I want to talk to you today about a tension that we feel in our lives. A tension between living as an individual, as an autonomous individual person, and living together as part of a collective, as part of society. So we feel that tension when we need to collaborate, when individuals need to come together in a company or a family in order to achieve something. And we feel this tension when our political leaders need to negotiate together and countries need to achieve something. And we feel this tension when we know that we need to collaborate for the greater good. So it's a tension between the freedoms and opportunities that each individual has and the responsibilities and for sharing and collaboration that we have when we come together in larger groups. So this is a tension that has been studied, researched by many branches of academia. So it's a question that economists look at, that political scientists look at, that psychologists look at, that historians look at. But in my talk, I want to tell you today about other perspectives on the same problem. And the first perspective comes from biology. So biologists care about individuals like this little insect, this little ant, because those individuals come together to create really complex, beautiful structures like this underground home, this nest that the ants build. And biologists care about these individuals, individual cells, because these cells come together to form the most amazing machine in the known universe, the brain. They organize together into complex structures where they communicate and deliver thought, consciousness in your brains. And biologists care about these individuals, little germs, bacteria, because multiple species of bacteria come together, they glue themselves together into complex microbial cities where they collaborate and exchange materials, and in that collaboration, they achieve antibiotic resistance. So the little individual, the little purple individual, can be wiped out by an antibiotic, but when multiple species collaborate together, they resist our antibiotics and can be huge problems in hospitals. So all of these are examples of individuals collecting together and achieving something bigger than an individual can achieve. And amazingly, across all of these disciplines, economics, psychology, politics, and biology, academics often use the same thinking to try to understand these systems, even though they're really different from each other, even though we're thinking about things as different as a microbial slime on the one hand, and politicians like Donald Trump on the other hand. So things totally different from each other, but the same thinking. And the thinking is, let's treat those individuals as though they are playing a game with winners and losers. So I want to tell you a little bit about this way of thinking because I want to point out a big gap in it, a big problem. So it'll be a very simple cartoon, a very simple picture of what is a very complicated area, game theory. So it works like this. We start with two individuals. They have no home, they have no history, they have no relationships, they are just lonely individuals, and they need to decide how to behave when they're presented with something they care about, maybe some money. So each individual can decide just whether to be nasty or to be nice. If one individual is nice and the other is nasty, the nasty guy takes all the money. The nice guy gets nothing. If they both decide to be nasty, then they fight and they lose lots of the money, and a little bit is left and they get that. Okay? And if they're both nice, then they split the money and they both end up with quite a lot of money, but not as much money as if they took all of the money to themselves. Okay? So this is a game, a strategy game, okay, about winning money. And unfortunately, the analysis that game theory delivers often tells us that individuals should behave selfishly, that they should be nasty, that that is the most logical, rational, reasonable way of behaving. Because if in this game I am nice, I risk losing everything, because a nasty individual takes all of the money. So they should be sad, because they only are taking a small amount of the money that they could have taken. They're wasting lots of money. And we should be sad, because there's something missing in this story. Where are the collectives? Where are the families, the companies, the cities, the nations that we talked about earlier? They're missing from this picture, which is all about individuals. So artificial life research can show us how important that gap is. So here's a nice picture from some research by Ezequiel Di Paolo. He takes a game from game theory, where game theory says people will be nasty. That's the only reasonable way to behave. And he takes this game and he embeds it in space. So each of these dots is a person playing the game, and they can only play with individuals that are near to them. Okay? So it's spatially constrained. And what Di Paolo finds is that individuals form clusters, and that in the middle of each of these clusters is cooperation. Now, the game is the same. The rules have not changed, the money has not changed, the parameters have not changed, so we should see nasty behavior. All that has changed is we've taken that game and put it into space. A second example, nice and colorful, shows the same story. We take a system of different species. This is due to Pauline Hogeweeg and Martin Boerlicht. Each species is a different color, and we spread them out on a piece of paper, and species individuals can only interact with local neighbors. And they collaborate, and they form these beautiful spiral patterns of collaboration, helping each other to survive and proliferate. In the middle picture, we introduce some parasites, some black dots, which take away energy. They ruin collaboration. They destroy cooperation. And if that system were not embedded in space, if we let every agent interact with every other agent, then the parasites would win. They drive cooperation extinct. But because the system is spatially embedded, because we've spread it out on a piece of paper and interactions are local, cooperation survives. It drives the parasites away, it kills off the parasites, and the spirals persist. Okay, so the same story, a system which should fail when it's embedded in space succeeds. So why? Why is space helping? So we can look to neuroscience for a hint at the answer. So here are 3 neuroscientists, and they care about what is it about the brain that makes it able to be complex. So they think there are 2 ways of being simple. One way is for a system to be fully integrated. Every part is directly connected together. But that's simple because all that system can really do is average, like everyone shouting in one room. And another way to be simple is to be the opposite, to be fully segregated, where every part behaves separately. And again, you can't get complexity out of that system because there's no exchange of information, there's no cooperation. So the brain is able to be complex because it combines a balance between segregation and integration. Our brain has separate parts doing separate jobs, but they are integrated to make coherent behavior. So how would we build a network that has this balance of integration and segregation? Well, when we analyze the problem, you need these type of structures in your network. Loops, interesting loops. So we don't need these kind of structures, other alternative structures, right? We just need these ones. And how would you get those structures into your network? Well, it turns out when you make spatial networks, networks that are spatially constrained, you get loops for free. So here are random dots that I've put on the screen, and I connect together the dots that are close to each other. And you can see, if you look carefully at this picture, lots of loops, yeah? Lots of cycles, lots of triangles, lots of squares. Okay, they happen for free. I didn't have to work very hard to make those happen. So now we have a story. Space takes systems and enables complex collective structures, and those complex collective structures enable sophisticated cooperative behavior. So space enables complex collectives. That was one of the things that was missing in the game theory example. In fact, it's something that brings in all of those properties that we cared about. With space comes a home, comes a history, comes relationships, the things that were missing from the game theory picture, and that we know are important because the work of people like De Paulo and Hogeveg shows that it changes the game. So these kind of ideas from artificial life research might help these disciplines to understand and explain their problems. But in the last couple of years, the stakes have got a lot higher. Things have changed, and that's because a new discipline has entered the story, computer science. And computer scientists are different in many ways from other academics. But there's a key difference here. So whereas an economist or a historian wants to explain or understand, a computer scientist wants to build things. They want to engineer new kinds of autonomous individual. Smart cars, smart devices in our homes, smart robots that care for me when I get old. And if we get these design decisions wrong, there are life and death decisions that are made by these autonomous individuals. Okay? A self-driving car needs to decide whether to crash over here or swerve over there in an accident, and we need to make sure that it makes those decisions right. And computer scientists are also engineering collectives, not just autonomous individuals, but collectives. And those collectives are full of autonomous engineered individuals. Right? Twitter is continuously trying to get rid of the bots, the robots. Yeah? So what we're doing is creating a world that is full of new kinds of autonomous individuals and new kinds of collectives. And I think it's a major challenge for the 21st century that we become confident that we can engineer those systems positively. Okay? And that means understanding fundamental questions like the relationship between the individual and the collective. I grew up in a country where we had a prime minister for a very long time when I was young, Margaret Thatcher, and she very famously thought that there's no such thing as society. Right? This is a quote. She thought there were just different kinds of individual, and social collectives were something we imagined. That's very consistent with the game theoretic perspective that I showed you, right? Start with the individual and then see if you can explain the collective. But the spatial systems that I showed you suggested that actually none of those individuals are autonomous. They're all connected together. They rely on each other for flows of information and energy and matter. And actually, maybe it's time to change to the opposite perspective, or at least explore what it suggests. Maybe we should think the starting point is there's no such thing as individuals, only different kinds of collective. And that's the end of my talk. I'd just like to thank my students, my collaborators, and thank you for listening. Thank you.